Alright, here's what you need to know about how the biggest bank in the world got away with stealing millions of identities. Imagine this. You're hanging out with a friend. He pulls out his wallet, hands it to you, and says, "Hey, could you hold this for a second? I just need to go to the bathroom." You say sure, but once he walks away, you quietly take a pen and write down his social security number. Then later, while he's still in the bathroom, you open a credit card in his name and start charging luxury vacations. That's identity theft, a felony, 15 years in prison, heavy fines, and you'd be forced to pay back everything you stole. Now imagine hundreds of people doing this, thousands, over and over again. What kind of punishment would that bring? Well, if your name was Wells Fargo, the answer is not much at all. Here's how. In 2002, Wells Fargo hired a new CEO named John Stumpf, and John was obsessed with growth. In fact, he wanted his bank to be the go-to financial supermarket for everybody in America. Every customer should have at least 8 different accounts with the bank checking, savings, credit cards, loans, mortgages, retirement accounts, lines of credit, and auto loans. He bragged that his customers would eventually beg Wells Fargo to take their money because they would have so many accounts. Wall Street loved it, investors cheered, and the stock soared. But there was one tiny problem. Customers didn't actually want 8 accounts. So what happens when your name is John Stumpf and you desperately need to grow your bank, but customers do want to help? You cheat the system. John set an insane goal. Open at least 1 new account for every existing customer. The problem was, most of those customers didn't want or need another account. So employees were told to open fake accounts behind the scenes. At first, they'd get scolded. But then something interesting happened. As employees opened more and more fake accounts, managers stopped caring, and eventually they started opening fake accounts themselves. This game of pin the tail on the donkey went on for years. Employees created fake email addresses, like none@wellsfargo.com, and set debit card pins to 0000 so they could log in and add money to the fake accounts. They even made up fictional relatives for customers, like Mrs. Smith's imaginary brother-in-law Harold, who liked to gamble online. To cover their tracks, Wells Fargo employees hid the fake accounts under the real accounts, so it was almost impossible for anyone to notice. Inside the bank, they called this trick pinning. And by 2016, they'd been pinning customers for more than a decade. Wells Fargo had opened nearly 2 million fake accounts and credit cards without telling customers, but no one knew about the fraud until a former employee blew the whistle. His name was anonymous. And here's what happened. In 2012, he noticed that his branch was opening way more accounts than any other branch in the country, and he began seeing dead people open accounts, and he started getting suspicious. So he decided to investigate. Working with another employee, they looked through customer files and found a secret folder with hundreds of fake accounts. They dug deeper and discovered a secret spreadsheet with dozens of fake email addresses and fictitious relatives. When they showed the documents to their manager, he told them not to worry about it. "We all do it," he said. But Anonymous didn't believe him. He took photos of the documents and sent them to the compliance department. But instead of thanking him for exposing the fraud, Wells Fargo fired him for leaking confidential customer data. He was escorted out of the building by security guards. A year later, the Wall Street Journal published the story. Anonymous became an overnight hero. He went on TV and told the entire country that Wells Fargo was defrauding its own customers. And finally, the feds stepped in. They charged 5 Wells Fargo employees with conspiracy to commit fraud. But guess who wasn't charged? John Stumpf. Here's why. He tried to blame everything on lowly bank tellers. He claimed he was just a hard-working CEO who was trying to motivate his employees to sell more services to customers. "Tell me if this sounds familiar," he said. When someone comes into your home and tries to sell you a vacuum cleaner, and he asks you, "Do you need a vacuum cleaner?" You say, "I don't need a vacuum cleaner." And he says, "Ma'am, you need a vacuum cleaner. Ma'am, you need a vacuum cleaner. What are you going to do? Are you going to buy a vacuum cleaner?" Wall Street bought it. His investors loved it. The stock barely dropped 2% after the scandal broke. But it turns out, You can't frame innocent bank tellers forever. In 2017, Wells Fargo agreed to pay $142 million to settle claims that it violated a previous consent order from 2004. Which is ironic because that consent order was for violating a previous consent order from 2000, which was for violating a previous consent order from 1999. Okay, good times. Here's the kicker. After paying the fine, Wells Fargo walked away with hundreds of millions of dollars from its golden parachute. He pocketed $185 million in total compensation. Now, imagine stealing millions of identities and walking away richer than ever. Only one group really held Wells Fargo accountable: the public. Account openings at Wells Fargo plummeted by 44%. New customers fled and the bank's profits collapsed. But some say that wasn't enough. 5,300 employees were fired. Not the executives, the employees. The whistleblowers who tried to stop the scam also fired. Meanwhile, the CEO and top executives walked free. They were never charged. The CEO retired with a multi-million-dollar golden parachute. Even the board of directors walked away with $200 million. Only one person went to jail, and he was a low-level manager. He pleaded guilty to helping open fake accounts and served 6 months in federal prison. Meanwhile, the real victims of this scandal walked away with nothing. Customers who trusted Wells Fargo with their hard-earned savings lost billions of dollars when fake accounts were opened in their name, fake credit cards were issued in their name, and fake account numbers were provided to creditors in place of the customer's real account numbers. In some cases, this caused customers to miss payments and incur late fees and damage their credit scores. For others, it resulted in the loss of thousands of dollars when scammers drained their accounts. So that's how Wells Fargo happened. But here's what I think. If you or I stole someone's identity, we'd be in prison, no questions asked. But when a giant bank does it, executives walk away with suitcases full of cash. Employees take the fall. Justice never shows up. That's the real face of corporate crime. And unfortunately, it's just the tip of the iceberg. The real crime wave is right behind us. Click here to learn how the biggest financial scam in history is happening right now. Or click here to watch this next video. Thank you for watching. Thank you for watching.